All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be the latest entry into the series New Woke Order. And this edition is going to be featuring none other than the Washington football team, formerly known as the Washington Redskins. Now, when I previously reported about this narrative, this situation, I digressed into hopefully providing some context to the origins of the term Redskin and what it actually means. And by the way, I will be continuing that series somewhere down the line. It will be more of an exhaustive inspection into the origins of that term Redskin and how they relate to the Aboriginal or so-called copper-colored peoples of the Americas. But once again, that will be when I get to that series. Just getting back to the point of the video, though, it's very obvious to me that there seems to have been a stalemate at the bargaining table or the debate table for the quote-unquote Washington football team. And it was because they were scared that every name or slogan that they wanted to call the team was going to be quote-unquote offensive to someone. And you can't live your life that way. Either that, or on a three-dimensional level, esoterically, they want the name of the Washington football franchise to be indicative of the province of Washington, D.C., aka the District of Columbia. They want the team to almost operate outside of the conventions of the rest of the NFL teams that play in real cities. Washington, D.C. is not a city. It's a city-state, along with Inner London, which is the financial capital of the world, as well as Vatican City, which is considered the quote-unquote spiritual capital of the world. Those are the three declared city-states. Washington, D.C., the military capital of the world. Inner London, within the city of London, England, which is considered the financial capital of the world. And Vatican City in Italy, which is considered the spiritual capital of the world. So, is that the reason why they're not allowed to give the Washington football team a new name? Maybe. I've already made, some of my own suggestions. Names like the Washington Warriors, the Washington Americans. I'm not quite sure why no one has mentioned some of these terms, which would be, an allusion to what Washington, D.C. supposedly stands for. Unless, once again, they're trying to make the football team an end sample for wokeness. And above that, they want to imply that Washington, D.C. is separate from all of the other cities in the United States that have football teams. But anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, listen up, guys. Skip Shannon, Washington football team president, Jason writes.
Now, this football player right here, Chase Young, he's also someone to watch who could be a potential Monarch programmed athlete. He has the number 99, which is almost always indicative of the term mind cage. Think of J.J. Watt. So he's someone who brothers should definitely be keeping their eyes on to potentially be involved in overarching NFL narratives or maybe even off the field troubles. We'll see.
The franchise nickname that was once considered temporary could end up being the permanent solution. Right said, quote, there are a set of folks that have warmed to the Washington football team.
Like who? Who the fuck wants that football team to be called the Washington football team? Like, that just sounds stupid. That's like a comic book character, that's meant to represent a celestial force just being called him, or I am. Some nonsense like that. Or Prince with just the symbol, the Washington football team. Now think of a fucking name. Unless, like I've already stated, they're discussing potential names and you have a lot of these woke people sitting at the table saying, well, that seems to be a bit too offensive. That might be construed as toxically masculine. And, they're trying to effeminize football so much. It's really sad.
For a substantial part of our fan base to feel that this is a continuation of something versus a...
Once again, watch out for this dude.
We reset, something brand new. So, Shannon, I'm curious, are you good with this?
Really, Kip?
Yes, really.
So what's the Washington football team? That's what we're going to go with now.
I think so.
Really? And he thought that was a good idea. So there are a lot of smart people around the table.
Allegedly smart. Allegedly. But your intelligence can be compromised in this wokosphere that we're living in because no one wants to offend anyone else. But I certainly would have loved to have been a fly in that room to see exactly how the conversation flowed, because something tells me that there was someone in there who was determined to make sure that everyone who had any ideas about what the team should be called was made to understand that we're living, quote unquote, in a new day. We're not living in a time where you could call a team the Hawks or the Falcons or the Warriors or the Rhinos or anything that might come off as too aggressive. I suspect that there had to have been someone in the room with that type of tonality, because why would it be this difficult to figure out a name for the team? Just go with Washington Warriors. It's alliterative. It's also, has that masculine energy that you would want your football team to have, but maybe that's the problem. Who knows? And not to digress, but this person here, the head coach of the Washington Redskins, or the Washington football team, quote unquote, Ron Rivera, I mentioned him a long time ago as a potential handler in the NFL. For those of you brothers who've been on my YouTube channel for a while, you remember that Cam Newton had an issue with a female reporter. And I believe that, I think that it was Ron Rivera who, at the press conference, wore a t-shirt that had, some type of symbology of an ape, or, be like this ape, or think like an ape, something like that, which is like suggestive or a trigger term that in my view was meant towards Cam Newton, who also, once again, just my perspective on it, is a Disney programmed Monarch athlete.
But what I think we ought to stick with this one. The Washington football team is kind of catchy.
Okay, but as silly as I thought it sounded in the beginning, are you not saying Washington football team and it's starting to be ingrained in your psyche?
Right, but what does that really mean? That's not an adequate name for a football team. Let's think of something. Let's be creative.
What they had,
well, I agree,
you could have called it the doorknobs.
Yeah, anything's better than what they had, right, Shannon Sharp? Even though you called them by that name for decades. These people are so silly how they're trying to rewrite everything. That's how you know this place is going down the drain.
Hey, from age 10, I grew up saying that R word that was their nickname until I realized that's a racial slur.
Right.
And now if it ever accidentally pops out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, sorry, because it's a racial slur.
Yes.
And yet I taught myself to say Washington or Washington football team. And now I'm starting to kind of like it. It's like it's okay. I can live with it. I think.
Right, but you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. Who gives a shit about what you think the name of the team should be?
Excited. Better than anything else we
So what's the mascot? Is the Capitol building?
The Invisible Man.
And I don't really care because I don't like them anyway. But I think they found a name.
Just a football.
That's not bad. Jenny Tapp said just a football. This is so ridiculous, man. But anyway, we'll see how things go with the quote-unquote Washington football team, as well as Chase Young and some of the other more prominent characters associated with that franchise. I just thought that this was very interesting, that you could have all these people sit around a table and no one could come up with an adequate nickname for the team. That tells me that there was someone in that room who was acting as, a rejecter of everyone else's ideas. And the force that they were using to help people understand why they were rejecting everyone else's ideas is that in this climate, or the optics, in this atmosphere, these type of terms that people are using now, which is why I'm so happy that I'm not in corporate America. I don't know how you brothers who are in corporate America do it. But anyway, peace.